Honourable Members, the Deputy Speaker.
Are there any constituency statements by honourable members? The member for Goldstone.
Thank you, Speaker. This week's budget saw the age-old ritual of the government announcing a tax cut with great fanfare to offset the impact of bracket creep. While the top-up tax cut is welcome relief, voters in Goldstone aren't fooled. It's yet another tactical return of bracket creep just before an election, not a sustainable or transparent way to run the tax system. I've been calling for the indexation of income tax brackets for some time. Indexation forces governments to make deliberate, honest decisions about revenue, rather than relying on inflation to quietly grow the size of the tax pie. When I speak to voters in Goldstone, they're frustrated with the major parties on this issue. My community tax survey made that crystal clear. Bracket creep is a stealth tax increase year after year that disproportionately burdens younger Australians, workers and families. It allows the government to fill its coffers through an over-reliance on income tax and enables them to kick the can down the road instead of conducting a meaningful review of our tax system. As our population ages, we must broaden the tax base to ensure the next generation isn't saddled with enormous national debt and the interest payments that come with it. Relying on revenue creeping through the back door is no longer working for the lucky country. And unless we get serious about tax reform, we're going to run out of luck. For too long, the major parties have relied on windfalls, whether from resource prices, superannuation taxes or bracket creep, to paper over structural deficits. But that well is running dry. Hoping for budgetary luck or favourable resource prices is not fiscal policy. It leaves the national accounts in structural deficit with no real plan, and there's red out until at least 2035. Bracket creep is not just bad policy, it's an intergenerational equity issue and a drag on the lives and the livelihoods of working Australians, especially young people. 17 countries in the OECD already index their income tax brackets. There's no reason Australia should lag behind. We are the lucky country, but luck isn't a policy. If I'm re-elected in May, I look forward to working constructively with both major parties to restructure our tax system so it's fit for purpose and fit for the future of our children. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. The member for Kingston.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, over the last 3 years, the Albanese Labor government has been working to build Australia's future. When we were elected after 10 years of coalition being in government, inflation was rising and wages were going backwards through a deliberate design feature of their policy. Of course, there were year-on-year cuts to Medicare, hospitals, schools, TAFEs and other essential services. There were 23 failed energy policies. And that is after the Liberals' famous promise in 2013. No cuts to education, no cuts to health, no cuts to family payments, no cuts to the pension. But we saw cuts to all of those things. Now, over the last 3 years, our government has worked hard to clean up the mess left behind and deliver for the Australian people. Under our government, inflation is down, wages are moving again, and more Australians are in a job than ever before. We are delivering cost of living relief to all Australians through tax cuts for every taxpayer, not just high-income earners, along with cheaper medicines, energy bill relief, wiping student debt and cheaper childcare. We've strengthened our social safety net to include legislating the largest increase in paid parental leave since its inception, and we will pay super on it. We've been rebuilding our essential services like Medicare, aged care and the NDIS, and starting the largest housing build under our Housing for Australia plan, which will deliver 1.2 million homes. Not only has our government taken action on climate change as a good global citizen, but has embraced it as its competitive advantage, an opportunity to build our country's economic capability. Of course, we are building on that a record that we can be proud of, not making empty promises like those opposite. We actually deliver. But of course, this is all under risk by the Liberals and the Leader of the Opposition, who have recklessly opposed every single cost of living measure introduced by our government. Now, here today, they're going to oppose and repeal our tax cuts too. This is the modern Liberal Party. But we are not going to let that happen. We have our eyes focused on the election and building Australia's future. Of course, our focus has been how we rebuild Medicare, how we build universal early education in this country, how we ensure that we continue to deliver responsible cost of living relief for Australians, and how we are more resilient as a country. That's what's on risk this election from those opposite, and that's what the Labor Party has to offer.
Thank you. The member for Wannon.
Deputy Speaker, this nation is at the crossroads, and the next election is going to determine which direction it takes. And that is why it's going to be absolutely vital that the coalition wins, because if we have another 3 years under Anthony Albanese and his failed Labor government, we're going to see cost of living continue to increase, and we're going to see our living standards to continue to fall. And those living standards have fallen faster than at any time in this nation's history. So what do we need to do to get Australia back on track? Well, the first thing we need to do is provide immediate cost of living relief, and that is what we would do. We would halve the fuel excise on the first day the Parliament sits with a new coalition government. Now, what does that mean? That means for an average family, especially in a rural community like mine, in a rural constituency like mine, the electorate of Wannon, it means that families would immediately save in the first year between $750 and $1,500. That's immediate cost of living relief. And we will make sure that we also manage the economy properly. We'll put downward pressure on inflation. We'll put downward pressure on interest rates. That is what sensible economic management will achieve. And we will make sure that we address the cuts that we have seen to road funding. The two major roads that run through my electorate, the Princes Highway and the Western Highway, have seen the contribution made by the federal government to their maintenance and to improving those roads drop from where the Victorian state government, for every dollar they put in, we used to put in $4. Now, for every dollar the Victorian state government puts in, the federal government under Anthony Albanese only puts in $1. We need to change that, and we need to change it quickly, because everyone in Victoria knows that the Allan Labor government has no money. It's broke. And so if the Commonwealth doesn't put in more money, we're not going to see that immediate attention given to our road network. What else will we do? We will make sure that there is no offshore wind farm off the coast of Port Fairy and Warrnambool. Chris Bowen has tried to ramrod this project through our local communities, and we will make sure that it doesn't go ahead. And we will continue to roll out community projects, and we'll fund them in the budget. Unlike this Anthony Albanese Labor government, put no new funding for those regional community projects in the budget. The most important election we've faced in years. You've got to vote for the coalition.
The member for Pearce.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'm proud to stand before you today as the member for Pearce, representing this vibrant and diverse community in one of the largest and fastest growing areas in the northern metropolitan area of Perth. As a former mayor of Wanneroo and president of the Western Australian Local Government Association, I am proud to continue this service in the Australian Parliament. Our electorate of Pearce is a region of immense growth and opportunity, and our community proudly reflects the multicultural tapestry of Australia. I am proud to highlight the significant investments the Albanese Labor government has made in healthcare within our community. The Clarkson Medicare Urgent Care Clinic has been a welcome addition for our residents. This clinic provides convenient bulk-billed medical care 7 days a week, easing pressure on the Joondalup Health Campus. Furthermore, we have successfully petitioned for and are planning to establish another Medicare urgent care clinic in Yanchep. This commitment demonstrates our intent to provide quality healthcare services for the benefit of the Pearce community. We have also invested in community infrastructure, including the extension of the freeway to Romeo Road and the train line to Yanchep, with 2 additional stations at Alkimos and Eglinton that opened last year. The Albanese Labour government has contributed $30 million to the Alkimos Aquatic and Recreation Centre, which will provide a fantastic hub for recreation learning and will create jobs and stimulate economic growth in our region. On a broader scale, the Albanese Labour government has achieved significant milestones across Australia, including strengthening Medicare, reducing the cost of PBS medicines, increasing the minimum age, giving every taxpayer a tax cut, introducing fee-free TAFE, creating more jobs, adding 2 weeks to paid parental leave, ensuring every shopper gets a better deal at the checkout, helping more Australians to own their own home, securing a future made in Australia, and giving every household a combined $700 off their power bill with a $150 rebate from the 1st of July. In my first speech, I stated, I promise to serve with all the passion, prudence, integrity, energy and resolve that I possess, and I thank you for putting your trust in me. I'd like to extend my deepest gratitude to the community of Pearce for their unwavering support. Your valued contributions and feedback are what drive our efforts to make Pearce an even better place to live, work and raise a family. And I look forward to continuing our work together to build a brighter future for our local community. Thank you.
Thank you. The member for Herbert.
North Queensland has been inundated by floodwaters over the past 2 months. Many homes in the electorate of Herbert have been impacted and continue to be impacted today. From Bluewater in the north, Woolgaroo in the south, Kelso in the east and Magnetic Island in the west. Thousands of local families have suffered because of the extremely wet start to the year. Some homes have been inundated by water, others have been swamped by sewerage. Most homes and businesses have had mould growing on the walls, ceilings and floors. The damage has run into the thousands of dollars for many. Townsville has a heart like no other region. People are tough, but they deserve better than the crumbs that they've been served up by the Albanese Labor government. While the Prime Minister made a cash splash to win votes in the southeast following Tropical Cyclone Alfred, North Queensland was begging for help more than 6 weeks after the flood impact. The level of disdain shown by this Prime Minister reached record heights when he flew into Townsville for a media stunt, then left hours later, jumped on his private jet to attend a Labor Party fundraiser. The speed in which the PM left North Queenslanders to fend for themselves was rivaled only by the speed in which he threw cash at every possible voter in the state's southeast. It makes absolutely no sense and is grossly unfair that the Prime Minister applied one set of standards to funding arrangement eligibility in the southeast corner and another less favourable approach to residents in North Queensland. After the advocacy of the North Queensland community turned into a loud roar, so loud that even a Prime Minister couldn't ignore, he finally announced additional support to cover the broader Townsville region last week. But, as with everything from this Labor government, there's a catch. I've received thousands of messages from desperate locals who are still being told they aren't eligible for financial support despite being severely impacted. We have instances in Kelso where one person in the household was deemed eligible, but the other person living in the same residence deemed ineligible. That is totally unacceptable and yet another example of bureaucracy gone mad. The messages I've received have been heartbreaking. Jenny wrote to me, I'm immunocompromised, feeling unwell, mould all through my house, water leaked through my walls, and I've been rejected. Another wrote, my mum Margaret was evacuated. Her house got water all through it. She lost everything, mate. Why is the government rejecting her claim? Prime Minister, I call on you to urgently review this flawed policy and ensure the people of North Queensland can finally get the help they so desperately need instead of being treated like second-rate Australians. Prime Minister, this is not your personal slush fund to buy votes in the southeast. Start treating Townsville with the respect that they deserve.
The member for Greenway.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak about the healthcare the families of Greenway want and deserve. The accessibility of high-quality healthcare has never been more important, particularly in the fast-growing northwest. And that's why we ran a successful community campaign that secured an emergency department for the planned Rouse Hill Hospital. And it's why we're campaigning for a maternity ward at Rouse Hill Hospital, backed by broad community support. We need the public Rouse Hill Hospital to be built for the future, not for yesterday. As I meet with constituents across Greenway, there is rightful concern about the commute times to access health services at Blacktown Hospital or Westmead. In the nation's fastest growing population corridor, we must ensure essential services to support this growth are prioritised. Improving access to urgent care for non-life-threatening injuries is another critical part of Labor's plan to improve health care for Australians. That's why I was so pleased to recently announce that Labor has committed to delivering a Medicare urgent care clinic in Greenway. Labor's Medicare urgent care clinics provide fast and accessible health care for urgent, non-life-threatening injuries such as burns, cuts, infections, sprains, minor fractures and more. Medicare urgent care clinics are walk-in, open early till late and fully bulk bill. At the Medicare urgent care clinic in Rouse Hill, all you will need is your Medicare card, not your credit card. It will take pressure off Blacktown and Westmead hospitals and will mean people get care when they need it without waiting hours in a busy emergency department. Labor proudly built Medicare, and since coming to office, the Albanese government has been making it stronger. We have delivered cheaper medicines and more bulk billing, and a re-elected Albanese Labor government will deliver another 50 Medicare urgent care clinics on top of the 87 we've delivered in our first term, including in Greenway. North West Sydney is part of this, and I'm proud to assure my local area that through stable advocacy and good government, they can expect more under Labor. The alternative is placing everything at risk, and I won't stand for that in Greenway. The Leader of the Opposition was voted the worst health minister by Australian doctors, and he tried to destroy Medicare, and we won't let him do it again. He tried to end bulk billing and slash $50 billion from public hospitals. He wanted to monetise essential healthcare by making patients pay a GP tax to see their doctor. They had 9 years in government and never opened a single urgent care clinic, and they've repeatedly labelled them as wasteful spending. So how on earth can you trust them to deliver this facility for our community? Labor's urgent care clinics are an essential service, and only a re-elected Albanese government can be trusted to deliver for the people of North West Sydney.
Thank you. The member for Ford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And this week we have seen a budget which really encapsulates what we already know about this government. It is a government that is bereft of ideas, it is a government that has given up, and it's a government that has lost the plot. Every Australian, and in particular every resident of Ford, is poorer now than they were 3 years ago when this government came to power. And this was the budget they did not want. And in true form, it is a budget for the next 5 weeks, not for the next 5 years or even the longer-term future of this country. It's all about short-termism and getting a government re-elected. At a time when living standards have suffered the biggest collapse on record, Labor's budget has failed to deal with the economic challenges our country faces. Our constituents waited with bated breath to see how this government's plan to meaningfully bring down the cost of living, and this budget failed to achieve that. Now, you will have $5 more in your pocket, but some 15 months down the track. Now, the government thinks that that's something you should shout from the rooftops, but you'll be able to really splurge and to really treat yourself. But let's not forget, shall we, that your food has gone up some 13%. Let's not dwell on the fact that electricity has gone up 32%, or that insurance, rent, health, education expenses are all at all-time highs. Comparatively tonight, the Coalition will outline our plan to get Australia back on track. We will put forward meaningful change, something we didn't see for any of my electorate because we are once again left out to dry by this Labor government. There is nothing for the electorate of Ford in this budget, and it demonstrates that this Labor government has no consideration for our people. Labor has always taken the electorate of Ford for granted. Whereas the LNP and the Coalition over our time in government has delivered a wide range of projects for the electorate under its tutelage as government. And we have seen a range of projects, whether it's the Chambers Flat Road upgrade, which sadly Logan City Council still haven't built, Mount Lindesay Highway upgrades on the M1 to exits 41, 49 and 54, upgrades to Badesett Beanley Road, to the M1 more generally, and a range of local community projects including Headspace funding, urgent care clinic, Logan Hospital funding, seeing small business supported and our manufacturers supported through a range of initiatives. It is only under a coalition government that my electorate afford benefits. And that is why it's so important in this upcoming election that you vote LNP to get Australia and to get Ford back on track.
Thank you. The member for Lalor.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, Deputy Speaker, I was born and raised in the electorate I serve. I have lived my entire life there, and I will always have and always will fight for my community. And that's why I'm proud that our federal Labor government has managed to get inflation going down, wages going up, unemployment staying low, which has resulted in the first lower interest rate. I believe that addressing the cost of living pressures facing locals is our #1 priority, and it has been since I was elected and the Labor government was elected. And that's why we've delivered tax cuts for every taxpayer, cheaper childcare for around 8,000 local families, energy bill relief for every household, HECS help relief for 18,000 locals with student debt. We've expanded paid parental leave, we've increased rental assistance by 40%, and we've provided cheaper medicines. We've also ensured wage increases, and that's why in this budget we've gone further. More tax cuts for every taxpayer, more energy bill relief for every local household, more funding to further strengthen Medicare to make it free to see the doctor, and a 20% reduction for all student debt if we're re-elected. And today we've found out that the Liberals will legislate to increase income tax for every Australian if they win the election. There is no doubt in my mind that we need to return the Albanese Labor government. In my community of Lalor, we are home to many faiths, cultures and languages. Our community's diversity is what makes us strong. I want to wish my Muslim community all the best for those who've been observing the holy month of Ramadan, and a very, very happy Eid. Eid Mubarak. And to my Christian community, to those who are observing Easter, I wish you a happy, happy Holy Week. I wish you well. I hope whether it's you spend Easter in religious observation or whether you spend it with family and friends and a long weekend, I want to wish everybody in my community a very happy Easter. I want everyone to stay safe over that long weekend. I want to ensure that everyone in our community understands what the upcoming election means for them. The difference between an Albanese Labor government and a Liberal government. The difference is that a Labor government cares about every Australian. We want to ensure that every Australian earns more, keeps more of what they earn, and that's why we've introduced the tax cuts. That's why we've supported pay rises for the poorest in our community and made sure that our aged care workers, nurses and carers and our childcare workers all got a pay increase across this first term in our government. You can trust Labor to support everyone, not just some people in our community.
Thank you. The member for Bonner.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Although we anticipated the arrival of ex-tropical cyclone Alfred, the intensity and the precise location of the cyclone was still unknown. This made it a difficult task for locals and authorities to prepare proportionately for the incoming weather event, and not something that we are used to in southeast Queensland. And I'd like to say thank you to the many volunteers who helped friends, neighbours and strangers throughout ex-tropical cyclone Alfred. Throughout the long days at the sandbagging depots, I repeatedly saw generous acts of selflessness, togetherness and a contagious get the job done spirit. Afterwards, as flooding set in, it was clear that we were in for a massive rebuild and restoration, particularly on Boundary Street in Tingalpa, Billen and Grey Street in Carina, as well as Moreton Island. I saw the damage firsthand as Team Vasta door-knocked flood-affected suburbs, conducting welfare checks and offering to drop essential items as the reality of the job set in. This is why I wrote to the Prime Minister asking that he make the federal government's disaster recovery payment available to Brisbane residents. Following my letter, the eligibility criteria were extended in recognition of the hardship faced by our community. I'm glad the Prime Minister chose to listen and recognise how much the payment was needed. We joined the cleanups and at the Wynnum Wolves Soccer, AC Dolphins Carina and the Mount Gravatt East Junior Rugby League Club, swapping their boots for old runners, and in a few hours we made significant progress restoring damaged fields, equipment and infrastructure. We saw massive turnouts, and it's clear just how much these clubs mean to their local communities. I want to thank Lord Mayor Adrian Schrinner and Premier David Crisafulli for their strong leadership, as well as the entire Council, Bureau of Meteorology, SES and Energex teams for their swift action and clear communication throughout ex-tropical cyclone Alfred. Thank you to the local businesses like Lamoni Greek Cuisine and May's Thai, who gave meals out for free to the community. Well done. And a shout out to BMD, who not only teamed up with felons so that we could pass on cold refreshments onto volunteers, but also joining the Ute Army to drop green waste at the Council's free resource recovery centres. Whether it be a phone call to a physical hand, or it was heartening to see locals stepping out of their usual routines and conveniences to chip in. While the weather is unpredictable, no one knows how certain we are, but we are always stronger together.
Thank you. Member for Lingiari.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I just want to touch on both our federal budget last night and to look at it from the Northern Territory's perspective. And I think for the Northern Territory in 25-26, the government expects to provide the Northern Territory with $7.2 billion in funding, which is nearly 88.3% of the Northern Territory's total revenue. Now, there's been a lot of media over the last 24 to 48 hours for members opposite, also our CLP government in Darwin, saying that there hasn't been, and the Northern Territory has done badly in terms of the federal budget. Couldn't be further from the truth. I think we've got a Northern Territory Treasurer with his L plates on that is doing nothing but playing politics in terms of the NT at the moment being the biggest beneficiary in terms of GST payments. If we go back before under the Liberal government over 10 years, there was a reduction in the Northern Territory by over $310 million in GST payments. It has been fantastic to see that being reinstated by our government, and you had the NT Treasurer coming out a week ago saying, big win for the Northern Territory, this is fantastic, pat, 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 we've done a great job. And then the day of the budget day and the next day saying, oh, this is bad, this is terrible for the Northern Territory and the NT has lost. Get it right, stop contradicting yourselves and try and look at the budget papers and try and understand that a bit more. NT, I'm looking forward to getting back into my fantastic electorate, Deputy Speaker, which is nearly the whole of the Northern Territory except Darwin, but also to visit Christmas and Cocos Island, because it is an electorate that this government has certainly recognised that needs a lot of resources and support. And when I look at the budget, and I will go throughout the Northern Territory and sell this budget to my constituents, there has been substantial investment, particularly in infrastructure and connectivity. When we talk about connectivity, the NBN, but also our highways. So it's important that the budget reflect not just the $200 million in terms of the Stewart Highway, which that duplication and that part of the Stewart Highway, unlike the CLP Senator, I drive that road quite a bit, and it is a part of the road that actually does need that money. So I'm looking forward to that happening, but it does need the CLP government to deliver on all of those infrastructure projects that we've outlined in our great federal budget.
Thank you. The member for Dunkley.
Thank you.
Sorry. In accordance with Standing Order 193, the time for members' constituency statements has concluded. And I call the the member for Dunkley.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move that the Federation Chamber do now adjourn.
Is the motion seconded? Second motion. Thank you. The question is that the Chamber do now adjourn. All of those of the opinion say aye, of the contrary no. I think the ayes have it. And I call the member for Calare.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Since the First World War, the Lithgow Small Arms Factory has been integral to our nation's security and cultural history. After the Boer War campaign, it became clear that Australia's geographic isolation meant that it required a sovereign arms-making capability. After Federation in 1901, it fell to the new Australian government to secure Australia's defence and make Australian arms manufacturing a reality. The Lithgow Small Arms Factory officially opened in June 1912, when the factory had 190 employees, which grew to 373 employees by June 1914. When the First World War broke out, the factory was still not up to its full production potential of 20,000 rifles per year. It's been manufacturing arms for our men and women in uniform ever since. By 1937, the factory had been making about 30,000 rifles each year, and with the outbreak of World War II, by 1942, employment at the Lithgow Small Arms Factory had grown to 6,000 people, with a further 6,000 employed at various feeder factories around the region. Weekly production had increased to 4,000 rifles per week at this time. Through the Korean and Vietnam Wars to modern-day conflicts, Lithgow has continued to make rifles for the Australian Defence Force and is currently operated by worldwide defence and armaments manufacturer Thales. The community values and supports Thales and the crucial employment it brings, as well as its contribution to our national security. Defence manufacturing at Lithgow must continue. At the site of the Lithgow Small Arms Factory is the Small Arms Factory Museum. The museum is iconic not only for Lithgow, but Australia. It's the keeper of the history of arms manufacturing in Lithgow and our country. Visitors come from all over our nation to visit the museum and learn about the arms being manufactured there. 10,000 people visit the Small Arms Factory Museum every year, and it's a key tourist drawcard for Lithgow and the region. Many Australians have a deep connection with Lithgow and the Small Arms Factory. The museum is a real and tangible link with our nation's history and is why so many people feel attached to it. The museum is run by a small group of volunteers and is funded through admissions and sales in its shop. The museum's hard-working executive includes President Donna White, Vice President Adam Cullen, Graham Dixon, Joseph Abram, Secretary Kerry Gearan, Lynn Butler and Ray Bent. I thank all of the museum's volunteers for their wonderful, dedicated work. The community really appreciates it. Last year there was a criminal break-in at the museum in which dozens of historic handguns were stolen. The museum has been closed since the break-in, pending essential security upgrades to the building. The closure of the museum has had a devastating impact on the volunteers and also people around Australia who wish to visit the museum, including those who want to research the history of family members who worked at the Small Arms Factory. Unfortunately, at present, there appears to be an impasse over the museum's tenure at the Small Arms Factory site. Thales has offered the museum a lease, but the volunteers have issues with the proposed terms. The museum wishes to buy the site to secure long-term tenure and its future in Lithgow. However, to date, no sale of the site by Thales to the museum has been agreed upon. The Lithgow Small Arms Factory Museum is truly unique. It not only contains a firearms collection, but also contains UNESCO-listed archives and a huge machinery collection. If the museum does not reopen, the collection will be split up and Australia and Lithgow will lose a key part of our history. I'm therefore urging all parties to redouble their efforts to conclude outstanding issues between the Lithgow Small Arms Factory Museum and Thales. The community is extraordinarily supportive of both armaments manufacturing in Lithgow by Thales and the museum, and it's vital for Lithgow and Australia that this issue be resolved as soon as possible. This is our history at stake, and it would be a real tragedy if the museum closed for good and its collection was lost. Our community is of the firm belief that the Lithgow Small Arms Factory Museum must be saved and reopened. It's as simple as that. I hope all outstanding issues can be resolved by all parties with good faith and goodwill. The community wants a bright future for both Thales and the manufacturing that occurs in Lithgow, and also the museum. They both have a key role to play in our wonderful region.
Call the member for Lyons.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It's been an article of faith in the Liberal Party, handed down in reverent tones from Liberal parent to Liberal child, that the Liberal Party stands for lower taxes, while the godless socialists of the Labor Party seek only to tax and spend the nation into economic oblivion. The facts tell a different story, of course. 2 Labor budget surpluses, anybody? But facts rarely shake those of the deepest faith. But what a shock it must have been this week for even the bluest of blue believers to see Holy Writ being torn up before their eyes. A Labor government voting to cut taxes and a Liberal opposition voting to keep taxes higher. The Liberal leader even described Labor's tax cuts as a cruel hoax, despite the fact they contribute to a package of tax cuts now delivered by a Labor government that will see on average $2,500 put back into the pockets of Australian workers every year. But I'll tell you what is a cruel hoax. Spending 3 years as Liberal leader voting against every cost of living relief measure the Labor government has put forward and then claiming to care about the cost of living. That's a cruel hoax. Spending a parliamentary career railing against so-called higher taxing governments, but then voting to keep taxes higher. That's a cruel hoax. Opposing work from home flexibility, which saves workers the significant cost of travelling to and from an office, but then opposing workers having the right to disconnect from their employers when on their own time. That's a cruel hoax. Standing next to tradies and apprentices claiming that he backs them, but voting against same job, same pay laws that ensure workers are treated fairly on the job. That's a cruel hoax. Inviting employers to claim long lunches as tax breaks, but opposing their employees getting even modest tax cuts. That's a cruel hoax. Complaining about immigration while opposing the Labor government's cap on student visa numbers. That's a cruel hoax. Complaining about crime when, as a Liberal minister, he presided over a migration system riddled with corruption and human trafficking, and he did nothing to stop robo-debt. That's a cruel hoax. Complaining about the cost of energy when he did nothing as a senior Liberal minister for 10 years to produce more energy supply. That's a cruel hoax. Complaining about the cost of energy, but voting against Labor's power bill relief and against Labor's cap on domestic gas prices. That's a cruel hoax. Planning to spend hundreds of billions of dollars of taxpayers' money developing nuclear reactors when, as a Liberal minister, he said such a plan would be too expensive and take too long. That's a cruel hoax. Planning to cut thousands of public servant jobs when he wasted millions of dollars on expensive consultants as a senior Liberal minister. That's a cruel hoax. And claiming he supports veterans while planning to cut the jobs of the staff who provide their services. That is a cruel hoax. Deputy Speaker, the next election will be called within days and will be held in May. In just 3 years, this federal Labor government has delivered a record number of new jobs, supported higher wages and fairer working conditions, delivered bigger and better tax cuts and halved Liberal inflation. But we know the job's not done, and we know people are still doing it tough. The difference between Labor and the Liberals is Labor is doing something about it. Our measures improve the economy over the long term after a decade of Liberal neglect and failure. We are fixing the skills crisis that we were left with free TAFE. We are building more homes. We're delivering critical infrastructure, improving school and tertiary education and strengthening Medicare. We are doing this while providing affordable, responsible cost of living relief, backing in higher wages and delivering permanent tax cuts so workers earn more and keep more of what they earn. The alternative? A divided Liberal Party, at war with itself and its own principles. A Liberal Party wedded to a nuclear plan that is unaffordable, undeliverable and unnecessary. A Liberal Party that will smash the essential services Australians rely on, and all led by a Liberal leader whose own record as a Liberal minister is one of cuts and portfolio failure. Deputy Speaker, this will be my last contribution to this Parliament. I use it to urge all listening to vote Labor at the May election in both the House of Representatives and in the Senate. And in Lyons, vote 1 Rebecca White. Thank you.
Call the member for Page.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I just want to get up and speak quickly about the cost of living relief that we're going to be giving in tonight's budget and reply when some of those have been alluded to, but also talked about some of the wonderful Nats candidates who are standing in this general election. So as we saw, 70 cents a day for Labor's plan a year or two out isn't cost of living relief. It's some pie in the sky, or maybe you wouldn't even get 2-minute noodles on special, I think it's 70 cents, Deputy Speaker, but ours is going to be immediate cost of living relief. If you fill up your tank, it's about 60 litres, you're going to be saving 15 to 20 bucks every time you fill up your tank, Deputy Speaker. That's real cost of living relief. And I know our candidates are excited about this, Deputy Speaker, and I just wanted to go through a number of our candidates that are standing for us. We have Mia Davies in Western Australia, standing in the seat of Bullwinkle, Deputy Speaker, a wonderful candidate, was actually the opposition leader in the WA Parliament in the last term. Her father too was a Nationals legend. She has real Nationals pedigree. So she's standing in the seat of Bullwinkle. She will be a great representative given her the fact that she has been in the state parliament, has represented her seat over there very well, and we're very excited about Mia potentially being in this chamber. We also have a great candidate in Bendigo, Deputy Speaker. You might say Bendigo, the Nationals. Yes, we have a strong candidate, Andrew Lethling, really well-known small businessman in Bendigo, is running a great campaign, has really strong local support, and we're really excited about his candidature there in Bendigo and looking forward to him joining. We also have Sam Farraway running in Calare, Deputy Speaker. Really excited about Sam being a candidate for the Nationals in Calare as well. Sam is an ex-state MP, has a great record as a state roads minister, and is a really strong local person. I was talking to Sam this morning. He knows the cost of living issues are the important issues for the people of Calare. Sam, very supportive. We spoke this morning about the petrol excise cut, the tax cut in petrol that we spoke to this morning. He's also very excited about our nuclear plan, cutting energy bills, Deputy Speaker. The community, he believes, at Mount Piper, there is the proposition there that we have a nuclear generator there, and as he says he wants that because it's reliable baseload. We support renewables, we like renewables, but we need secure baseload power. And as he says, he wants to know where all the candidates stand in Calare on this nuclear generator, because as he says, if we don't have a nuclear generator there, Deputy Speaker, where are we going to put the 1,500 wind turbines that we'd otherwise have to do if we don't have that nuclear capability? So the other things that I know that are important to Sam as well, he speaks with great passion about the Great Western Highway. He was very disappointed in the Labor, Greens, Teals Independence budget this week, Deputy Speaker, in the sense there was no new money for the $2 billion needed for the Great Western Highway. The $15 million Bathurst Integrated Medical Centre, very big passion of his. There was no money for that either. There was also no money for local roads in Calare, and as Tam said, that's what you get when you get an independent. So at the last election, Calare did elect a Nationals MP. He, for his own reasons, on the voice referendum left the Nationals. We were very disappointed about that he has left, but we are asking the good people of Calare, we are very worried about the election after the election result, if we were to get a minority Labor, Greens, Teals independent government. We think that wouldn't be good for the people of Calare. We don't think that would be good for the people of Australia. So we're asking both the people in Bullwinkle, the people in Bendigo, the people in Calare, the people in Whitlam, the people in Hunter, the people in Richmond, where Kimberley Hone's running. We have some great candidates around the country, Deputy Speaker. We're asking all those local communities to support their Nationals candidate because, as I said, we want strong representation. I think the best result for this country after the next election is to have a majority Liberal Nationals coalition. We have been proven through many decades of being in government of being strong economic managers. We have national security concerns as well, which we think we will be stronger on. We know we need cost of living relief, which is why the petrol excise is important to us. We know it's important to family budgets. We know 70 cents a day, a year or two out, isn't going to cut the mustard. So I'm very excited again about Sam Farraway and Calare and many others. We need strong representation in this chamber for the Australian people, especially in regional communities, not a Labor, Greens, Teals, independent minority government. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Call the member for Boothby.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Albanese government is closing in on 3 years in government, and for me, almost 3 years as the member for Boothby. My entire career has been about serving my community through my work in the health sector, in local government, delivering services and infrastructure, and my work in the not-for-profit sector as CEO of Catherine House and St Vincent de Paul in SA. I decided to run because of the appalling record of the Abbott-Turnbull-Morrison Liberal government. Their complete lack of action on climate change and energy transition. Despite 24 coal-fired power stations announcing closures, they did nothing to replace that energy in the grid. Their appalling record on treatment of women in Parliament and their deliberate ignoring of the issues facing women in the community, and the lack of focus on integrity. The Liberal government was riddled with constant scandals and allegations of rorting, so many week after week it was hard to keep track of them all. They promised an integrity commission but didn't actually introduce any legislation to make it happen. This government inherited inflation at 6.2% and rising thanks to the big spending Morrison government, which overheated the economy and left Australia with massive debt. RBA rates have begun to go up. This government has turned that around. Inflation now sits at 2.4% and falling, and we have had our first RBA rate cut. Unemployment is at record lows, an almost unbelievable achievement to bring down inflation and keep unemployment low at the same time. Over 1 million Australian jobs have been created, another record for a term of government. Wages are finally rising after flatlining under those opposite their deliberate strategy to disadvantage Australian workers. Every taxpayer has received a tax cut, not just the wealthy, and now they are set to receive a top-up. And every household is receiving energy supplements. 2 historic surplus budgets in a row means $170 billion paid off that Liberal debt, and so much has been achieved across the country and in Boothby. Labor is the party of Medicare. We believe healthcare should be affordable and accessible to all. We've opened a bulk-billed Medicare urgent care clinic in Marion, which has already seen over 17,000 patients. So that's 17,000 patients who didn't end up in the emergency department. We're expanding the bulk billing incentive, the biggest investment in Medicare's history. We've already seen a 4.2% increase in bulk billing in Boothby, and our next step is to expand this to 9 out of 10 appointments being bulk billed. We've saved locals more than $7.5 million through cheaper medicines, and we've opened an endometriosis and pelvic pain clinic in Glenelg. We're now investing $573 million in women's health to provide more choices and reduce costs. Having run women's health services, I can tell you this has been so welcomed in the community and in the sector. And of course, there's the rebuild and expansion of Flinders Medical Centre, which will mean an additional 150 beds. 52 of those beds have already opened between Flinders and Repat. Education changes lives, and this government has been working hard to bring our neglected education system up to scratch. We're investing an extra $1 billion to fully fund South Australian public schools. We've made early childhood education cheaper, and we're committed to a guaranteed 3 days for every child, because a child that arrives at school ready to learn has much better educational outcomes. We're cutting student debt, delivering the massively popular and oversubscribed fee-free TAFE to encourage students to skill up in the areas this country needs and to give them a good quality, secure, well-paid job. Unlike those opposite, we haven't ignored Australia's need for the energy transition. We've ticked off over 80 large-scale renewable projects, enough to power 10 million homes. And there's another 130 projects in the approval process, because industry and investors know they're onto a good thing with the renewable energy. In Boothby, we have the much-promised, never-delivered tram overpasses at Marion, Morford and Crossroads, and the Majors Road on-off ramp finally happening. And in the budget earlier this week, funding for the Adelaide Freight Bypass, which will finally take heavy vehicles off Cross Road. Deputy Speaker, there is one big risk to all of this progress. The economic management, the health, the education benefits, the progress on energy transition and the environment. If we get a Dutton Liberal government, it all goes away, all the progress. The man voted worst health minister, the man who needs to make massive cuts to fund his nuclear fantasy, which even half his own party don't believe in, and no energy company or bank will back, which is why we, the taxpayer, have to pay it. But he won't tell you where the cuts will come from until after the election. Don't get conned by a short-term sweetener by a big spending Dutton opposition. They don't have the interests of Australians at heart. They only care about their billionaire donors. We have a lot to lose.
For Sturt.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Greater Adelaide Freight Bypass is a project that involves building a new heavy freight route from Monarto to Truro, so that heavy freight that is currently travelling, say, from Melbourne to Perth, no longer has to come through suburban Adelaide and instead can get off the southeastern freeway at Monarto, travel on a new route up to Truro and then connect to the Sturt Highway and go wherever that freight needs to go. It's a vitally important project for my community in Sturt and indeed for the entire city of Adelaide, because it is patently ridiculous that heavy freight from, say, Melbourne to Perth is travelling through suburban Adelaide. Now, on Tuesday night, I hope to see some kind of commitment towards this project in the budget, and regrettably there was no money in the budget for the Greater Adelaide Freight Bypass. There was only one project listed in the budget papers for South Australia, which was a project in Northern Adelaide, Curtis Road, $125 million, the one and only project in South Australia listed in the budget. But things became a little more curious when the next morning some South Australian Labor MPs started to purport on social media that the budget had delivered funding for what they call the High Productivity Vehicle Network. The HPVN is essentially the entire freight route from the Victorian border and New South Wales border across to the Western Australian border, so a 1,500 kilometre from border town to the Nullarbor WA border route. And the HPVN, it was claimed in a press release the morning after the budget, was receiving $525 million, a press release from the Honourable Catherine King, the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development. And she says in this press release that the HPVN will deliver upgrades between the South Eastern Freeway and Sturt highways, such as the duplication of the Swanport Bridge. Now, the Swanport Bridge has nothing to do with the Greater Adelaide Freight Bypass. It's no doubt a worthy thing to do at some point in time. But in fact, the Swanport Bridge is already carrying freight that is rumbling through the suburbs of Adelaide. And indeed, an upgrade to the Swanport Bridge will ensure that even more freight can travel through the suburbs of Adelaide, whether that be through Portrush Road or Cross Road. And so the money that wasn't in the budget, wasn't listed in the budget papers, but was then referred to in a press release the following day after the budget, is money to increase the ability for heavy freight to travel through my community in Sturt, along Portrush Road, and indeed into the future, no doubt, along Cross Road. This is greatly concerning because I was crestfallen to see no money in the budget to build the Greater Adelaide Freight Bypass. But now it turns out not only is there no money to build the bypass, there is money to increase the amount of freight going through the suburbs of my constituency of Sturt. This is an absolute disgrace, an absolute disgrace. But it gets more confusing still, because we've heard nothing so far from the South Australian State Government welcoming the announcement of this funding, or even confirming that they want it, or that they even are going to be a partner in the project, which is very rare for a project that would have to be delivered by the South Australian State Government. The $525 million doesn't specify how much of that would be going to this Swanport Bridge, which will increase freight going through my community. And there's also confusion at Infrastructure Australia about whether or not they've even approved this funding and agree that it passes through the processes that they have in place. There are Labor members and candidates claiming that this announcement will be building a freight bypass. That is a patent lie. This is a plan to put more freight through the suburbs of Adelaide. Duplicating the Swanport Bridge makes it easier for more freight to go into suburban Adelaide, and there is no money whatsoever to build the Greater Adelaide Freight Bypass, which involves building a new carriageway from Monarto to Truro. So I say to my community in Sturt, to people in seats like Boothby and Adelaide,
watch out. We thought it was bad enough that the budget was not going to take freight out of Adelaide's suburbs. It now turns out the budget is going to put even more freight through Adelaide's suburbs.
I call the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And the Bombala community recently celebrated 150 years of the Bombala Show, which is a huge community milestone. And I want to congratulate again all of the committees, the volunteers over the decades who have contributed to this long-running event. And also all the small businesses and the organisations that have sponsored the show along the way. But the recent show was even more special because the community came together to celebrate a very special Bombala legend, Councillor Bob Stewart, who has been serving his community for 30 years. He's a formidable character who champions the region with gusto, from his time as councillor and mayor of the Bombala Council, and now to the longest-serving member of the amalgamated Snowy Monero Regional Council. Congratulations again, Bob, on this milestone, and thank you for all you've done for our local community. I want to give a shout out to Eden triathlete Jack Caldwell. Jack is 18 years old and he recently won a gold medal at the 2025 Oceania Triathlon Junior Championships in Devonport. The win has secured him a spot at the 2025 World Triathlon Championships in Wollongong in October, representing Australia. He graduated in December last year from Lumen Christi Catholic College, where he was waking up at 5 a.m. every day to train and then head to school to complete his studies. Jack, well done. You're a legend. We're all cheering you on from the coast, and I can't wait to see how your bright future unfolds. Bring on Brisbane 2032. At the end of last year, I spoke in the House about Cindy Chawner from Cobargo, who was due to represent Australia at the Invictus Games in Vancouver this year. She competed in 5 sports at the Games, picking up a silver in the skeleton and bronze in snowboarding. Cindy joined the Royal Australian Air Force in '99, initially as a Reserves Operations Officer, later serving most of her career as a Personal Capability Officer. She was deployed in the Middle East in 2010 and was medically discharged in June last year. And despite a range of physical and mental health injuries related to her service, Cindy personifies what it means to be resilient and hardworking. Before she left for the Invictus Games, I gave Cindy an Australian flag and an Australian Aboriginal flag to take with her to Canada. And I bumped into Cindy in Cooma last week, and she showed me a picture of her with Prince Harry holding that Aboriginal flag. Prince Harry kept the flag as a special memento of the Games, and I'm going to put the picture up on my Facebook over the next few days, but it was absolutely fabulous to see Cindy. Well done to her and all of the Australians who were involved in the Invictus Games. I had the great privilege of opening Queanbeyan's new Seniors Centre last week. The Queanbeyan Senior Citizens Association is a dedicated organisation committed to promoting the welfare of all senior citizens in the city of Queanbeyan and surrounding districts. When I was asked to attend the grand opening, I jumped at the opportunity because jumping is what this fantastic new space is all about. Jumping, a little bit of stretching, from Zumba to yoga, but there are also activities that are much easier on the body but benefit the mind, like Mahjong and Euchre. But most importantly, the Seniors Centre is a place to connect with friends, both new and old, like never before. The space is a real testament to the Queanbeyan seniors community because it's been designed for the community by the community. It will have, this space will have a huge impact on our community, especially for the over 20% of the Queanbeyan population who are seniors. Congratulations to Brenda and the entire association on the opening of Queanbeyan's new Seniors Centre, and well done to Queanbeyan Palerang Regional Council on making it all happen and working with the community there. Deputy Speaker, across Eden Monero, a lot of my constituents from Goulburn to Queanbeyan to the coast work in the public service, which is why they are incredibly concerned about what they've heard from Peter Dutton, Angus Taylor and all of the Liberals about pledges to cut 40,000 jobs, which, to put in perspective, is roughly the size of Queanbeyan. He said he will cut workers' flexibility too, which will not only disadvantage workers, but it will disadvantage women in particular, and it will result in worse services to our community. Under the former government, Veterans Affairs claims took over 400 days to even be assigned to assessment. We've cleared the 42,000 claim backlog, and claims are now being allocated within weeks. Where are these cuts going to come from? Is it going to be Services Australia? Is it going to be Medicare? Is it going to be the Defence Call Centre in Cooma? Is it going to be NEMA, an organisation that has done so much good in our community over the last 3 years? If we are serious about good public service, then we have to back it, and $20 billion outsourcing to consultants is not that.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. All those of that opinion say aye. On the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The Federation Chamber stands adjourned until 10:30 a.m. Monday the 7th of April.